Hey, are you having a good AstriCon so far? Well, are you? Of course you're having a good AstriCon. Great. Good, so we're just getting very ready for our last session, which is the eagerly awaited wrap-up with Matt Jordan. But before we do that, you'll remember me saying there was an interest in signage. Signage seemed to be disappearing. So we've decided to give a little bit of signage away in this last session with a few questions and answers. Now, because there's lots of people, and because it'd be very, very difficult for everybody to shout out, I'm going to ask some questions, and if you just put your hand up if you know the answer, then one of our fine ladies, Natasha or Julie, will run to you with a microphone. If you happen to have the right answer, you will win an AstriCon 2015 sign. How about that? Woohoo! Okay. But before we do that, I want to give away something to somebody who's not even here. And that is a special stick it on the floor sign to a first-time presenter. Some of you will have seen his session this week. His name was Mark Ingalls from One Pork Chop, and he did a session about doing your first ARI application. We had so many good reports about it, we thought we should give him the Rookie Award. Unfortunately, he had to leave, but collecting it on his behalf is none other than our very own Joshua Culp. Joshua, would you care to come and collect this for him? In fact, Joshua just deserves a round of applause for being a consistent hat wearer at AstriCon, doesn't he? Thank you very much. Oh, you can pass that on. Great, okay, so let's get to the contest. So first question, in which, and I'm looking for hands to go up, and I will be trying to spot the first one. In which version of Asterisk did the ARI first appear? Which one? Yes. Okay, I've got right at the back there, gent at the back. Is that right? Ringer Parker? That was him, yeah. You just walked past him. That's right, young Jason.
Does it count if I was there at the time?
You're allowed to answer, Jason.
12.
Yes, you're correct, Jason. Come on down, Jason. Well done, Matt. Isn't it great that we're all just Asterisk fans and we just like this stuff? It's a wonderful thing. Okay, now, of course, everybody knows that RFC 3261, that defines SIP in some sense or other, was created back in 2002. But which month did it come out? Rob knows, but Rob was sat next to us when we were discussing the question. Do you really know the answer? And you didn't hear Matt and I discussing it? Okay. All right. What's your guess? It was June. Rob, come on down.
I should point out that I've already stolen one of these. I'm one of the thieves who stole the sticker off the floor once.
Well, thank you for confession. We'll have the local police authorities see you after.
I'm just saying going for employees. What's the third one? Come on, guys.
Okay. Let's think of the third question. All right. Who can tell me, in the world of Asterisk, what the letters AGI stand for? I'm going to go for the guy right at the back there. That's right, with the black T-shirt. I know I did see some hands up high, but they were ringers there.
Asterisk Gateway Interface?
Exactly, Tori. Come on down. Okay, so, as I already said, after this event is over, if you happen to want to peel up one of the ones on the sidewalk, then nobody's going to stop you. So they'll be available. And if anybody wants to take the big one off the wall and think they can get that on the aeroplane home, then you can have a go. So, without further ado, let me introduce our wrap-up keynote speaker, leader of the Asterisk project, Mr. Matthew Jordan.
So, all right, hey, I'm live. Excellent. Afternoon, everybody. Okay, so we're going to cover a couple different things during this talk. We're going to start off with just recapping what's been done in the Astris project over the past year. So, in the Astris project, every year at AstriCon, the developers get together before AstriCon for AstriDevCon. In AstriDevCon in 2014, the project set out 3 broad goals. The first goal was to move the project infrastructure from Subversion over to Git. That sounds kind of trivial. As it turns out, not so much. We spent a lot of time working on that this past year. A second goal set out by the developer community was to provide better documentation for Asterisk. And that kind of falls into 2 categories, both documentation for existing functionality as well as documentation for all of the new features that were done in Asterisk 12 and 13. I'd like to highlight that the developers, so the people who are writing these things, all felt like, wow, we should really write this down a little bit more. Tells you something, I think, at that point. And last and certainly not least, though, was to continue to advance the Asterisk project, where Asterisk acts not just as a PBX or just as a call queue or just as a voicemail server or any of these other various things, but where Asterisk is a generic media application server to make it work better in a larger piece of infrastructure. Whoop, too far. There we go. Okay, so Git, move the project to Git. Now, how many people in the room have used Subversion before? Pretty good number, excellent. So how many people have used Git before? Much more, that's excellent. How many have ever migrated a project from Subversion to Git? A few people, okay. So Asterisk, over its lifetime, had developed a large number of tools that existed in the repo tools project, which is also available. It's open source, and anybody in the project could contribute to it. But we had developed a lot of tooling around our Subversion system. So moving to Git was actually a pretty big deal for us. We wanted to preserve all of the history, all 400 some odd thousand commits that had been made at that point. We wanted to have all that history, all the branches, and we also needed to redo all the tooling that we had. Plus, we had a large discussion about what should we even move to. It's one thing to just put the project in Git, but that's just a piece. You're really moving to a different ecosystem. And so there was a large discussion debate that occurred on the Asterisk Dev mailing list, which is where we have all these kinds of conversations in the open. And a number of people suggested, go take a look at what the OpenStack project is doing, because they're doing some really cool things with their infrastructure. And so we did, and it's pretty amazing. The OpenStack project has spent an amazing amount of time and energy investing into their infrastructure, and it really is very fantastic. And there's 3 key pieces to this. It's Garrett for code review, which they have their little mascot, the Diffie, the Kung Fu Review Cuckoo, which is incredibly unique. And I don't know where it came from, but that's what they have. That's their mascot. Jenkins, which it does the continuous integration for the project. And then there's a third project that is a little weird. It's very tricky to explain, but it's called Zool. And it is the gatekeeper for everybody who gets the Ghostbusters reference. And it does the project gating, which actually sits between Garrett and Jenkins and tells Jenkins what it should go do. This was a large amount of effort for many months by a number of people. A large number of people in the community also helped out with that. In particular, Corey Farrell and George Joseph spent a lot of time also helping us clean up a lot of our little tiny things here and there with Git and Subversion. But the project has successfully moved to Git. All of our work is being done in Garrett. We have builds going off on every single patch set right when it goes up for review. It happens in Jenkins. One of the nice things about that is that if a contributor puts up a patch and there's anything wrong with it, before it has ever been committed, we'll know. The tests will tell us, they'll fail, we can get the patches fixed, and so nothing ever gets committed into the project before it's actually run through all of the tests that we have. So since we moved to Git, we've had 145 new features or improvements have been made over the past year in the project. We'll talk a little bit more about what some of those are in a little bit. We've had, overall though, we've closed 1,053 issues in the project, and we've had 1,271 commits to master. Additionally, as I mentioned, we have a test suite that runs on every single patch set that gets put up for review. And that's actually another open source project. And there are people here who not only contribute to that project, but also use that test suite in their own infrastructure to verify before they go do deployment for my infrastructure, is this build of Asterisk still working for me? The answer, of course, is always yes, but that's okay. And over the past year, we've introduced 203 new functional tests. We're up to 829 tests in the test suite. This number just continues to grow. We continue to both expand the test coverage for older areas of Asterisk, as well every new feature and improvement that goes into the project has test coverage. We were writing tests for everything. Lastly, I want to just point out, I work for Digium. I'm incredibly lucky and blessed to get to work on Asterisk every day. It's a fantastic job. I love what I do. But at the same time, Digium is not alone. There is a large community of open source contributors and developers who submit patches back to the project. This is just a whole bunch of them that I pulled out of the Git logs. But one of the things I always think is great about throwing this up every year is that you can see that this is a worldwide global community of developers who support the project, and this is why Asterisk is as successful as it is today. All right, so that was moving the project to Git. Another thing we focused on was documentation. I won't spend too much time on this because talking about documentation is only so exciting, but it is something we all appreciate, right? So a large amount of time has been spent refreshing the documentation on the Asterisk Wiki, both to cover existing functionality as well as to provide better documentation for new functionality. As David mentioned, there's the Asterisk REST interface. This is a new API. But if you go to the wiki, there's a number of pages that provide pretty good in-depth tutorials on how to go use ARI, as well as links back to sample applications that have been written in JavaScript, Python, and I believe Ben Merrills actually did contribute one for .NET as well, which is pretty awesome. So, and by the way, if you're interested in contributing more examples for ARI, we would love to have them and link them off of there. The more languages, the better. And all of those are actually up on the Asterisk space in GitHub. Additionally, we've provided a lot of documentation for how to actually go configure PJSIP in a variety of scenarios with particular examples for things where you want to deploy PJSIP behind a NAT, or if you want to make use of some of the cool new features in PJSIP where you can distribute device state and MWI between Asterisk instances using PJSIP. We've got a lot of really good documentation showing how to go do that. But of course, you're never done. Documentation is always a continual process. And as Nir pointed out on a panel discussion with me, while we are happy to continue to work on this, this is a community project, and documentation is a community effort. So if you, again, are writing ARI applications and would like to have that linked off of there, if you find something in the documentation that you feel like, boy, that could be a little bit clearer, by all means, please talk to us. We'd love to get the documentation continuing to moving along. Another thing that we provided over the past year, however, is it's the first step. We have several others that are planned, but the first new set of sample configs in Asterisk. So how many people in the audience have looked at the sample configs in Asterisk in the past? Good number. How many people copied them and just deployed them and ran with them? Uh-oh. Nir. The sample configs were reference documentation. They were not meant to really be deployed. Maybe they were at one point in time, but they sort of grew past that. Now there's all sorts of strange settings that you really should be aware of, but maybe you don't want to just put out there exactly as is. It also doesn't help that the sample dial plan in there kind of has some strange esoteric options sometimes, and there's a whole, it's reference documentation. So what we did is we created a fictitious company called the Super Awesome Company. The company is a reference company for what you might actually go build a system for. And I can't remember what the Super Awesome Company does, but Malcolm wrote it, and so it's got some interesting taglines. I believe they provide strategic marketing for targeted vertical. It's a lot of buzzwords. It's kind of hilarious. So anyways, you have what is essentially is a representation of a company that you might provide a basic PBX for. And in Asterisk now, there is a folder called Basic PBX that contains that company's PBX with a recommended way of configuring PJSIP, conferencing, queues, a whole lot of functionality that you would provide for this basic company. So you actually have a good reference implementation to start working from. And again, this is a continual process. We will expect that there will be more scenarios that we will build on this point. For example, Super Awesome Company gets acquired, and suddenly they go from 15 employees to 100 employees. What do they do now? That kind of thing. Last but not least, we've been focusing on extending Asterisk as a generic media application server. And when I talk about that, that really means that we've been focusing heavily on improvements and enhancements to the Asterisk REST interface. The Asterisk REST interface really lets you detach your business application logic from and pull it outside of Asterisk. And that's one of the key things to do when you're treating Asterisk as just a component in a larger piece of infrastructure. That means we've added a whole lot of new events for things that happen within your application, connected line changes. You have the ability to get events when a channel starts speaking or when somebody stops speaking, so talk detection. You also have the ability, if you so choose to do so, to intercept call hold. So if somebody hits the hold button on their phone, rather than putting the other party on hold, you'll just get an event for it, and we eat the hold signal. Why is that interesting? Well, maybe you don't want to put the party on hold. Maybe what you do is when you hit hold, you pull them out of the bridge and put them into some other place. You can change the meaning of that piece of functionality now in your ARI application. We've added a bunch of other different things to ARI. The ability to have different types of event subscription models based on your application. Normally, ARI requires you to subscribe to resources before you get events for it. We've added another way of getting events where you can tell ARI when you create your application, just show me everything. I'm not going to subscribe to anything. I want to just see the world, which is really nice for actual applications that are just monitoring things. We've added the ability to manipulate Asterisk modules and logging channels through ARI, and we've added the ability to push configuration into PJSIP via ARI. This is very interesting. This lets you actually not configure any of the PJSIP stack in a comp file or a database. Instead, through ARI, you can take a JSON blob and say, this is my endpoint, and punch it into Asterisk. And Asterisk has the ability to cache that locally for some period of time, depending upon the strategy you pick, and then you can delete it out when you're done with it. So if you have an external system that actually knows more about the phones and the devices and maybe wants to pick an Asterisk instance to push that into and then pull it back out and put it onto another Asterisk instance, that can all be done through ARI. And the interesting part is, all of this is available actually in Asterisk 13, not even just Asterisk 14. This is available today. So if you were here last year, remember we announced that we changed the new feature policy in Asterisk. Previously, new features and improvements only ever went into master. They never went into a release branch. And that actually made a lot of sense at the time when that policy was first introduced. But as Danny pointed out, things are moving kind of fast these days. The world is not static, and we don't want the Asterisk project to be static either. So, as long as you've written lots of good new tests to cover your new existing functionality, we are making improvements into the existing release branches as well. Now, of course, there's always a little bit of a yin and yang with this. If somebody comes along and, I don't know, rewrites the entire Asterisk module loader subsystem, that probably should go into master. We're being intelligent about what goes in there. Sorry, Corey. All right, so that's what's been done over the past year. But interestingly enough, that's not the question. People don't usually talk to me about all these new features and improvements. I usually get hit with one of these two questions. Every time I go to a conference and talk about Asterisk and what we're doing, this is usually what the audience asks me. Can I run Asterisk 13 in production? I mean, it's great. Glad to see you guys are doing really big, cool things. That's fun. But I need to be able to run Asterisk 13 in production. Can I do that? And OK, you have this new API, ARI. That sounds cool. But I've been using AGI, AMI for a long time. What do I do with ARI compared to these other two APIs? So I'm going to put our money where my mouth is, something along those lines. SwitchVox 6. SwitchVox 6 is built on Asterisk 13. Thank you. You should be thanking the SwitchVox team. They had to actually go consume these things, so they felt the pain right along with us. But it's been great, honestly. We're really, really happy. SwitchVox 6 is a great platform. It's a really awesome unified communication system, and it uses Asterisk 13 as the engine. But more importantly, it uses the things I'm talking about. So SwitchVox 6 uses the PJSIP stack. And so this is a reference of why did we write the PJSIP stack? Well, the community wanted it. That's important, right? We're not going to go write something that the community doesn't want. But at the same time, we as a company also want to consume this. We want to take advantage of the things that are going into the open source project. So here's how SwitchVox uses the PJSIP stack with very large blocks representing the various pieces. So on the left-hand side there, my green blocks, that's SwitchVox. They have an admin portal, and they have a piece of software that actually manages the configuration of the system. We've got a database, and then we've got Asterisk. And there's really four pieces in this with Asterisk. You've got the core, you have the PJSIP stack, and then you have the interestingly named data abstraction layer named Sorcery, along with some caching that is in Sorcery. And then finally, you have an ODBC connection back out to the database. So let's say the administrator in SwitchFox modifies Alice's device. That all goes through SwitchFox stuff. And the configuration management system decides eventually, okay, based on these modifications that the admin has done, I'm going to go update the PS endpoints table in the database. So a SIP invite request shows up for Alice, getting a call. And Asterisk goes through the stack, goes and hits sorry, finds out that we've never heard about Alice before. I guess we just added Alice. So there's nothing in the cache for Alice. And goes and retrieves Alice from the PS endpoints table. And Alice bubbles back up with all of her information about what her endpoint is back into the Asterisk core so that we can handle the call. But because we have caching, there's now a copy of Alice in the cache. And this is a proper cache. It will expire after some period of time, but when we get another call immediately for Alice because she hangs up and somebody calls back, we don't have to go hit the database again. But there's something missing from this. For those of you who have worked with ChanSIP for a long time, there's no reloading of Asterisk. There's no pruning peers. We have an actual cache, and things work how we would expect them to. Okay, so that's at SwitchFox making use of the PJ-SIP stack. SwitchFox also makes use of ARI. The SwitchFox queues use ARI in order to provide their queue functionality. So again, Alice calls in, and AGI dispatches out that call to the SwitchFox core. And the SwitchFox core then decides, what am I going to do with this call? Maybe if Alice was just calling another endpoint, we don't bother with ARI for that. We're just going to use a dial operation. But if we're going to go into a call queue, we dispatch that call back to Asterisk and tell Asterisk to hand that over to ARI. And that ends up into the SwitchFox call queue. And the queue gets a notification that, hey, you have a stasis start event for Alice. Alice gets placed into a holding bridge, and the queue determines in the SwitchFox core who am I supposed to call based on the Asterisk state, as well as what strategy I'm currently using. And then it informs ARI to go ahead and call the PJ-SIP endpoints that are the agents in the system. Why do we do this? Because we want SwitchFox to own the queuing logic. We want the Asterisk team to own the engine. So what have been some of the goals set forth for the past year, right? We talked about some of these goals. I thought Bill really hit this point, right? Which part of the strategy of trying to figure out what you should do is also trying to figure out what you should not do. And so for the past year, we've been discussing on the Asterisk dev list, what should we do? What should we not do? What is the important thing that needs to be done in Asterisk in order to make it a better media application server? One of the things we decided as part of that discussion is we're not going to release Asterisk 14 yet. A lot of times at the end of this conversation, I'll say, and the next version of Asterisk is now available, go download it, download. Well, that's okay though. We don't need to release Asterisk 14 yet. Okay? We're going to go build the right things for the community, for Digium, for the companies here, with the companies here. We're going to build the right things correctly. We're not going to just go release something because it happens to be AstriCon. But keep in mind, that doesn't mean that things are static. Asterisk 13 continues to grow, continues to get really cool new features and improvements all the time. Every point release is containing new features and improvements. So the big things that we're thinking about, those are still being baked into Asterisk 14, and the community is still discussing and deciding them. We had a lot of discussion about that this week at AstriDevCon this year. But that doesn't mean that as users of Asterisk that you're stuck waiting on us. You're going to get lots of good stuff as this stuff continues to mature. All right, so what is Asterisk 14, though? What have we decided upon as the community? Not surprisingly, while we have added a lot of new features and improvements into Asterisk over the past year to make it a better media application server, we feel that there are still some things that could go be done. There's still discussion happening about exactly what those should be, but as a community, I believe that we're united that this is the right vision for Asterisk. But when we talk about Asterisk being a media application server, really that means is that we're viewing Asterisk as a component in a larger piece of infrastructure. And so while there are things that Asterisk can do internally to go make that better, there's other things that it may also be able to do externally to make that better. Better integration with other projects. So what are some of the things we talked about at AstriDevCon? This is one of the major topics. So say you have Asterisk, and back in the day, this is what you had, right? You know, you deploy Asterisk, you configure a whole bunch of conf files, you use static conf files, and you have a functioning communication system. But eventually, you get a little bit bigger. And maybe you have a couple Asterisk servers at this point. and you realize, I really need a SIP proxy. And so you get a SIP proxy. Camellia being an excellent example of a SIP proxy, but OpenSARE or some of the others. Maybe you decide I want to put my configuration information in a database, so you deploy MySQL or Postgres. If you're using ARI, you decide, you know what, I've got some custom application logic. I want to write that in a different language. I could write it in PHP, could write it in Ruby. I could write it in Node.js, so I have JavaScript now, and I have some Node.js processes working with my Astra system. Maybe you decide you're going to add WebRTC functionality. So now you add something like Bespoke, which is Digium's platform from WebRTC. You could also use SIP ML5 or JSIP for SIP over WebSockets. And so your communication system keeps growing, right? Keep adding more things to the pile. But that's all communication. And much like Danny talked about in his keynote, communication is not a thing. Communication is part of a larger thing, and it's just a piece of a puzzle, right? And another piece of that whole puzzle is how do you go deploy this stuff? How do you go maintain all of it, right? And so for a while now, OpenStack has been one of the de facto projects for managing this kind of large infrastructure. But you've got other things coming in as well. Docker. The Zivo Avancall guys and a whole Voxy guys and a whole lot of other people are using Docker to go deploy Asterisk. You hear really good talks at AstriCon. There was, I can't remember the talk actually it was now, but they were talking about blue-green deployments and the right way to treat infrastructure as immutable. And that's all stuff that's happening right now. How do we go deploy Asterisk? How do we go maintain it in this larger infrastructure? And there are things that we may want to do in Asterisk to be a better participant in this kind of system. And then it gets even bigger. You have CoreOS, you have the ELK stack, right? How does Asterisk actually pass information off to these various systems? And so by the time you're done looking at this puzzle, you realize, well, there's a whole lot of things we should not be doing, right? But there's a whole lot of things that we should be doing better, maybe with some other people, right? To be a better participant in this kind of infrastructure. And so this is the direction of Asterisk 14. We're going to go look at this problem. We're going to go try to see what are the best ways to make Asterisk really work in a horizontally scalable infrastructure. And that's it. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Am I going to escape scot-free?
Boom.
Hi, so outside we saw a sign about Asterisk World in January. Could you explain what's the relationship between that and this AstriCon?
Nope.
I can do that.
I think David Duffett can.
Okay, yeah. So in Fort Lauderdale, 26th to 28th of January is IT Expo. In IT Expo, they have lots of different tracks. One of them is called Asterisk World. And so it's a smaller affair. And you'll meet the similar kind of people. We've got some of the speakers that have been here will be there as well. But it's kind of a show within a show rather than something wholly devoted to Asterisk. Does that answer your question, sir? Okay. I answered one at the wrap-up session. Who's got another question for Matt here?
I see some people in the back, too. Oh, and Jared, hey.
Hey, question for you. We heard a lot about Asterisk 13 going into SwitchVox 6. Was there anything on the SwitchVox side that got pushed back into Asterisk 13 because of the things they found as they were building on top of Asterisk 13?
Yes.
The sorcery caching is what Malcolm's telling me.
Yeah, sorcery caching was one of the big ones. Frankly, the SwitchVox team has been working incredibly closely with the Digium Asterisk team and feeding things back to us about things they liked and didn't like. And all of that information has been done. We then create issues in the open source project. We talk about it with the open source community, and then it gets put into open source Asterisk.
Fantastic.
So, yep. Oh.
Yeah. Hello.
Hey, Dan.
Hi, Matt. So I've heard an awful lot about Opus this week. and how much of a good codec it is. I was just wondering, will we see Opus in Asterisk 14?
The IPR issues are still there, but at the same time, I mentioned, for example, that Respoke is a Digi and WebRTC platform. So clearly, we are interested in Opus as well. And given with Chan Respoke and the ability to tie Respoke into Asterisk, certainly we would also like to see Opus and Asterisk as well. So we have the same desire. I think we need to go take a look again at those IPRs, but that's a process that we should be going through.
Okay, thank you. Oh, we got one here as well, Corey.
I just wanted to expand on that question. Once the IPR is resolved, do you plan to make the module available for, say, 13 or already released versions?
I have no idea, Corey. That's a crystal ball that I can't shake any harder at this point. I'm sorry.
Okay, any more questions for Matt? Going once.
Man.
Oh, sorry, didn't see that done.
If there's no more questions, I just want to say thank you for such a great job that the Asterisk team do for us every year.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, well, Matt will be sticking around, so if you wanted to talk to him briefly afterwards, I'm sure he'd be happy
But not
to
about
do
Opus.
that.
Opus is done. Don't
Yeah.
ask me more questions about Opus.
Any question about Opus, though, man?
Kill you, Rob. Kill you.
Form an orderly queue. But for now, thank you very, very much for attending AstriCon 2015, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.